On today's show, the Capitals rally and pick up a big win over the Red Wings, and Anthony Beauvillier is the newest member of the team.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals at the trade deadline and the newest member of the team, Anthony Beauvillier from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Where will he slot in? I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about Chris Patrick's thoughts on the trade deadline and why didn't the Capitals make more moves? But just to get it going here, we'll talk about the Capitals as they rally and pick up a big win over the Red Wings. And you take a look at the Red Wings, a team that didn't make a lot of moves on the trade deadline, a team that seemed like they were in it and now has dropped a bunch of games. Ultimately, the Capitals were able to bounce back and pick up a big win. And I think you're starting to see evidence as to why they didn't go out and make any of these big moves. And I'll talk about the trade deadline a little bit later in the show. But wow, what a win for the Capitals over the Red Wings. It took the team binding together. It took Aliaksei Protas coming up beast mode, but a big win for the Capitals. So let's dig into that right here. It was a challenging stretch with the team facing their first 3-game losing streak of the season right on home ice. But hold on, Caps fans. The team showed signs of life in a thrilling third period during Friday's matchup against the Red Wings at Cap One Arena. If you saw the beginning of the game, you might be thinking to yourself, why didn't the Capitals make more moves at the trade deadline? This is what we were fearing. But as it turns out, the Capitals had the answer and the bounce back. So let's talk about highlights of the game. As you know, watching the game, the Capitals got off to a rough start, finding themselves down by 2 goals early on. And what do we know about the Capitals is it's not the team that we remember from years before. This team had some pushback, and they did. They fought back hard, and it was Aliaksei Protas leading the charge with a standout performance, racking up 3 points. Aliaksei Protas, like I've talked about, if you are an everydayer of the show, you know how I talk about Aliaksei Protas and how his game has grown by leaps and bounds this season. The real magic happened in the third period where the team rallied with authority, scoring 4 goals, including 2 shorthanded. This team is feeling in a really good position. They're looking great. The vibes around the team are really good. As a Capitals fan, I'm feeling very good about things. I understand what it means for the team that they have struggled somewhat here as of late. If you don't know, before this game, it made it to the OT against the Rangers. They found a way to win. The Capitals had to go all the way to the shootout against the Senators, and then they dropped 3 in a row against the Lightning, Blues, and Flames. And that is ultimately why a lot of Capitals fans were wondering why the Caps didn't do more. But what we saw out on the ice against the Red Wings, that is why it was a good idea to kind of just stand pat and let this team do what it's done all year and do great things, being on top of the Metro, at times tied for the best team in the NHL. Aliaksei Protas in this game takes charge. To say Protas was electrifying would be an understatement, netting a shorthanded goal right at the start of the third period, tying that game at 2-2. He outmaneuvered a fatigued Moritz Seider and delivered a perfect shot into the far corner. And his shot, his confidence, I would say, is the biggest thing that's evident that Spencer Carberry has put the faith into him, woo, 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 as he likes to bark when he talks about Aliaksei Protas, that he feels a part of the team. And he's not just this young guy in the team anymore. And I think that confidence at the head coach, I think the confidence that Protas has in himself, that he can score goals on a regular basis, that is why we're seeing it pay off. Then just moments later, we saw Jakob Chychrun step up and make an impact, scoring from the point with a little help from Pierre-Luc Dubois, who created a crucial screen in front of Cam Talbot. Again, Jakob Chychrun, the guy, let's get it done sooner than later. Let's not wait for Jakob Chychrun all the way to this summer when we're going to have to pay too much or risk the possibility of losing him. But for Chychrun, his 18th goal of the season, tying his career high and underlining his status as the NHL's leading defenseman in game-winning goals this season. So huge what Chychrun has been able to put up this season. Taking a look at Wilson in this game as well. Tom Wilson on a shorthanded breakaway, capping the Caps in the game scoring. Speaking of Wilson, this marks an exciting time for him as he edges closer to his first ever 30-goal NHL season. There's a lot to be excited about Tom Wilson, about this team in general, that they were down by a pretty good deficit, 2 goals, rallied back, huge, a rally in the third period. That is why the Capitals are at where they're at. Now, post-game thoughts and a post-game chat, Wilson emphasized how tough scoring can be in this league, and he's grateful for the support from his line mates like Dubois and Dylan Strome that he's played with, here and there. Taking a look at Wilson, we've seen him on the top line. We've seen him playing on the second line. But all things considered, he has played very well. He also mentioned how much he enjoys the dynamic they've created on the ice. But it was that bounce back if you look at it. Taking a look at what the Red Wings put up, Dylan Larkin scoring just 43 seconds in, just a small area that he was able to kind of bank it in there, giving the Red Wings an early lead. And that is what set the positivity momentum going for the Red Wings. But Taylor Radish was the guy that had the answer in this game. And Taylor Radish really kind of popped off the page in this game as well, of course, scoring goals. But a goal rather, and 4 shots on goal. So Taylor Radish showing up big for the Capitals, and he was instrumental in this game as well. The late goal was a turning point, and boy, did it shift the momentum for the Capitals. Carberry praised the goal from Radish, stating it was crucial in pumping up the team's energy after a sluggish start. And sometimes it's just like breaking open the dam, and that's when good things will happen. I think that if you make it further in the game and you're down by a deficit, all it takes is someone to find the back of the net, and good things will happen. Hanging out in front of the net, good things will happen. Just ask Taylor Radish. And let's not forget the fight between Duhaime and Dominic Sheehan as well. It seemed to spark something in the Capitals, much the same way that it did with Tom Wilson in the game before as well. So, you take a look at it, Brandon Duhaime has a history of kind of being a tough guy. He was the motivator. And some people will say fighting doesn't have a place in the NHL anymore. I give you the example of Wilson and Brandon Duhaime here recently, that it can change the momentum of the game. I think that sports out there like the NBA, Major League Baseball, these kind of things, they wish they had a moment where they could drop the mitts. Say you're watching a basketball game and someone does you dirty, boom, punch them right in the face. That could be a game changer. But as far as Duhaime is concerned, huge in that fight. And sometimes it's about those little things that can help rally the team. Now, with this victory, the Caps hit their 41st win of the season and reached the 90-point mark, surpassing last year's total already. So to say this is a unique lineup, a unique roster would be an understatement. Now they're just 1 point shy of last season's total with 19 games left. So quite stunning what this year's roster has been able to put together. Plus, they've notched wins against all 15 other Eastern Conference teams, including a solid performance against wild card contenders. So I'm feeling pretty good. I know there was that 3-game blip there that the Capitals were not playing that well, but all things considered, the Capitals are playing really good now, and that's what it's all about. What have you done for me lately? Well, what they've done for us lately is kill it out there. As far as the head coach is concerned, on the other side of the bench, Red Wings coach Todd McClellan was less than pleased. He pointed out how important it was for the team to maintain momentum in the third period, but early turnovers cost them dearly and contributed to the Capitals' rally. So you take a look at the Red Wings, not out of it, not in it per se, that they've struggled and they've lost games. You got to be thinking to yourself, we know why the Capitals didn't make a lot of moves, but the Red Wings didn't make a lot of moves. maybe they should have made more moves. I guess I really don't care. I'm not a Red Wings fan, but if I was the GM of the team, or if I was a fan of the Red Wings at the end of the day, I guess it would leave me wanting for more. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about GM Chris Patrick and his thoughts on the trade deadline, and he answers the question, why didn't the Capitals make more moves? I'll discuss next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay. So say you're watching a Wizards game and you're not that into it, maybe you want to be into it. Put a little bit of money on it. Open up the FanDuel app. Put some money on this game. All of a sudden, that game got that much more exciting. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So the trade deadline was on Friday, and the Capitals made one move. That's it. They acquired Anthony Beauvillier from the Pittsburgh Penguins. A bit of a journeyman. Of course, remember what he accomplished with the Islanders. He's bounced around here a little bit. He played on the second line with the Pittsburgh Penguins most recently. He can play center. He can play wing. But, and I'll talk about that in the final segment, I'll talk about where he's ultimately going to slot in. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's talk about Chris Patrick and his thoughts on the trade deadline. When you talk about what Chris Patrick has done, he has a lot to live up to, considering what former GM Brian McClellan did. And it was said it was a seller's market. Chris highlighted that this year's deadline was definitely a seller's market. After the dust settled, he pointed out that diving into a trade market required teams to be prepared to pay a premium. And what were they after? Capitals prospects. Who didn't want to give up Capitals prospects? Me, Chris Patrick, probably you. We saw the teams were asking for a serious compensation to part way with their players, putting the Capitals in a tough spot. And we know the players that the Capitals were all in on: Brock Nelson, Lawton, these kind of guys. You take a look at Brock Nelson going out to the Avalanche, and Lawton going up to the Maple Leafs. That those teams needed a boost. And will they be that much better? I was listening to The Sheet, and Brian Burke was on the show, and he goes, you know what? They only give out one of those Stanley Cups. So despite these big moves that were made, and you take a look at the whole Rantanen debacle, that sometimes the Capitals, especially since the chemistry, the vibes, the team is playing so well, sometimes you don't want to upend the whole team and try to mess things up. The Capitals have done that in the past. I think they were smart not to make any big changes. Now, as far as promising prospects, Patrick shared that there were plenty of teams knocking on his door, specifically inquiring about some of their promising prospects. Leonard, Crystal, Cole Hudson, no doubt. This really underscores the strength of the Caps player development pipeline. You take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, they don't have a whole lot to give up as far as prospects. That Ross Mahoney and his guys have put this team in a good position for years to come. Now, however, in the end, they chose to hold on to their key future assets. Good movement as far as I'm concerned, emphasizing that trades involving these players just didn't fit the team's long-term vision. And why is that? Because if you are constantly in win now mode, then you can totally deplete the farm. I think the Capitals made the right move not to deplete the farm. Now, trade highlights, while the Caps were involved in discussions and came close to making a few moves, they only finalized one significant trade. Like I said, acquiring Anthony Beauvillier for a second-round pick. And not a real great second-round pick. We could say that second-round pick could almost have been a third-round pick. So a minimal thing that they had to give up. But Patrick noted that the timing wasn't right for any more aggressive trades, especially considering the value that they see in their current prospects. And, some teams really pushing their chips in. I saw the Stars. I saw Ratnin. I get why they were in and why they did what they did, but that is a big bite out of that apple. Somewhat similar to the PLD deal. I get all that, but you take a look at what Rantanen did in his brief time with the Hurricanes, a far cry from the numbers he put up with the Avalanche. And sometimes these big moves don't always pay dividends. The biggest example, I'm looking squarely at you, Nashville Predators. You went out, you did the things. Barry Trotz came out swinging. Turns out it was a swing and a miss as his team is flailing. Plus, the big thing, of course, is that Boston College regular season wrapped up. They're playoff bound, that they are cautious and looking ahead, particularly with Ryan Leonard's signing on the horizon this spring. So it's interesting, and I think that Ryan Leonard, at least on paper, ostensibly, is going to help this team take it to the next level. I guess we have not seen him play against NHL talent, but on paper, he stands to be a huge upgrade for this team. But all things considered, I think that Chris Patrick did the right thing. I think that sometimes we just get a little bit giddy, like, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if Brock Nelson or Ratnin came to this team? Okay, so who's coming out? And how are you going to tell that guy you're pulling out of the lineup that got the team where the team is at right now to bring in this new guy? Because take a look at the roster up and down. Who's coming out? And who would you feel okay with? Am I talking Eller? Am I talking Ethan Frank? These kind of guys, Taylor Radish, some of these tertiary players, they still got the Capitals where they're at right now. So sometimes when you try to fix things, even when they're not broken, I think that can be detrimental to your team. As far as Chris Patrick and the Capitals are concerned, I applaud the move that he made, a bit of a depth move, if you will, but I think that Beauvillier has a pretty good upside and should benefit the team oh so much. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Anthony Beauvillier, his thoughts about joining the team, and where will he slot in anyway? I'll break it all down next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking Capitals hockey on a weekend. I didn't think I could wait until Monday to get you guys caught up that a big win and the trade deadline. Again, there's nothing there to go, oh, wow, they did that. They picked up Anthony Beauvillier, but all things considered, he's not going to set the world ablaze, but all things considered, I think it was a pretty good pickup for this team. And what were his thoughts on it? Let's dive into that in this next segment here. We're going to talk about the buzz. I guess there is buzz surrounding Anthony Beauvillier. The seasoned NHL forward is making waves after being traded for the fourth time since 2023. Just recently, of course, he joined the Capitals, and he saw that it was a seller's market, or he saw rather that the Pittsburgh Penguins, being that they're, sucking big time this year, were probably going to be moving pieces out, and most notably Anthony. So the Capitals made a strategic move by acquiring Beauvillier from the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for a second-round pick. It's clear the Pens are trying to shake things up as they sit at the bottom of the Metro. But despite being aware that he might be on the trade block, Beauvillier admitted that he was still surprised when the deal went through. And I think that most of us would be. I don't think that a lot of us in our regular life are used to getting uprooted and moved somewhere else. That I understand where he's coming from and why it had to be a bit difficult for him. But now that he's on the Capitals, Beauvillier couldn't hold back his excitement about joining a team that's on top of the Eastern Conference, going from the worst to the best, almost biblical in proportion. He's been vocal about the admiration for his new teammates' hard work and success. And right away, where is he going to fit? Well, he is going, what it does mean, my initial take on it was that it could be for Lars Eller. Even though I know that he plays primarily on the wing, Lars Eller was seen as a glaring weakness. So who is coming out of the lineup? Unfortunately, it's going to be Ethan Frank, at least for now, coming out of the lineup to accommodate a more seasoned veteran. So that's the tough thing. That is the breaks. But Beauvillier, he's been vocal about his admiration for his new teammates' hard work and success. He said, quote, "It's an honor to be a part of this team," he said, fully aware of the goals that lie ahead. Again, going from the worst team to the best team, it has to be a good feeling. And he's got the pedigree, he's got the history. Beauvillier wasted no time getting settled in. Within 24 hours of the trade, he was on the ice with his new team, ready to roll alongside Dowd Duhaime on the fourth line. So that's where he's going to get a look. Ethan Frank, and I'll talk about him in a following episode, is on the big team. But it's a tough break for Ethan Frank, as I think he was showing improvement. I think that he has been pretty good, really good at points in his time since making the leap up from Hershey. He expressed relief about being on the same side as the team facing off in previous matches. But as far as his playing style is concerned, Beauvillier is known for his work ethic, speed, aggressive forechecking, etc. He's ready to bring the much-needed energy and grit to the Capitals lineup while focusing on fitting into the team system. So that grit, I think that is why he's tailor-made to play on the fourth line, because Dowd and Duhaime do have grit. So that's the big thing. His goal to enhance the team's performance through speed and create more scoring opportunities. So speed, that's an interesting thing, as Ethan Frank was the fastest guy on the team. Again, I don't hate this move. I don't love it, though, considering what it means for Ethan Frank, at least for now. But it's not just the trade that's noteworthy. It's also Beauvillier's connections with the other players in the organization. Of course, we know that he's already played with Lars Eller, as Lars Eller played for the Pens, and also had ice time with, you guessed it, Dylan Strome. Who has Dylan Strome not played with? All the new Capitals that came here, I played some with Dylan Strome. He's been there. Suffices to say, and Jakob Chychrun during his time with Team Canada. He mentioned, quote, "Knowing a couple of guys already finishes and makes it easier for me, definitely eased my transition." So, I think that familiarity is a big thing. I think that oftentimes when you come to a new organization, there is a bit of reservation. Am I going to fit in with these new guys? You take a look at PLD. He had Matt Roy, Orpik Niskanen, that I think there is something to familiarity. Now, although he missed the Capitals' 7 p.m. game against the Red Wings, he was quick to catch a flight to Washington and arrived just in time to settle into his new surroundings. He should be in the game against the Kraken on Sunday. So the big thing, as we know, this trade comes nearly a year after Beauvillier was moved from the Blackhawks to the Preds. He acknowledged that the shock of being traded doesn't fully fade away, even with experience. And you got to think about that you're living in an area. Imagine if someone told you at a moment's notice, you're moving across the country right now. But my house, my wife, my kids, you get on a plane, you're going tomorrow. And to have, I'm not sure of his personal situation, if he's got a wife or kids or girlfriend or whatever the case might be, but it's got to be tough, even if he is a single man, to go through these kind of things. But he acknowledged the shock of being traded doesn't fully fade away, even with experience. He said, quote, "You never get used to it." And I think that resonates with me. Even if I haven't been in a situation like that, I can kind of put myself in his shoes, if you will. He emphasized the significance of quickly adapting to the team's new system and building a rapport with his teammates. And it's a different system than what they play in Pittsburgh. So it will be interesting to see what kind of learning curve there is. But we don't have a lot of time to wait to see what he has in the tank, as he is set to make his debut with the Capitals against the Kraken. It should be a fun game to watch. Some matinee action before the team heads out west for those late games. I love it. In any event, that is where the Capitals are at right now. Welcome Anthony Beauvillier to the team. He will be on the fourth line, at least to start. Again, that means that Ethan Frank comes out of the lineup. Again, I'm not loving that, but I think they're going for experience, and I wouldn't etch that in stone, though. I think that if there is another player out there that dips, if a player gets injured, I think he could be somewhere else in the lineup, and Ethan Frank could go back in. But a good thing for the Capitals, again, if you look at the back of his hockey card, you're not going to go, oh my God, mic drop. But, a decent pickup is what I'm going to say. Just let's call it for what it is. And they gave up a second-round pick, like I said, which could have almost been a third-round pick. The Capitals would have gotten a player that would have been good 3-4 years from now, where the Capitals are in a position right now to do good things. So a small tweak here, second round pick, they get a player with some experience and ostensibly an upgrade. We'll see how it all pans out, but I'm cautiously optimistic, shall we say. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered all around the NHL 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.